Now that the cork is set, it's time for track. I've learned a lot about track over the years, but I'm very much still learning today. Some of the most important wisdom I can impart about track is this. It may sound obvious, but the quality of your track laying is only as good as your patience. Often when I was younger, I hastily slammed down track only to live with the disappointments not long afterwards. Cutting corners by using cheap quality track is unacceptable, even if you're on a tight budget. Even if you do have expensive equipment to run, they won't look good on the floor unexpectedly. Even less fun is saving up for a great quality locomotive only to have it run poorly because you were too impatient laying track. So I propose a few guidelines for HO scale track laying. Learn from my mistakes. Firstly, if you don't feel confident in your track laying abilities, or you want to modify the track often until you've got exactly what you think you want, I recommend using interlocking roadbed track. It's made by many manufacturers, but I would recommend Kato Unitrack in HO or N. Secondarily, I'd also recommend Bachmann's Gray Ballast Nickel Silver Easy Track in HO. Don't use the black roadbed Easy Track. It's made from steel, which rusts. Kato is overall higher quality, but much more limited options for curves and switches in HO. Bachmann's Easy Track has an extremely extensive variety of radiuses and switches and other special pieces in HO scale. The Alta II, however, had a strong track plan from the start, so I plan to jump right in using flex track and switches. In my experience, I can recommend two brands for two different reasons. Pico's Streamline 83 is a US prototype track made in a wide variety of pieces in the United Kingdom. It has a remarkably robust switch design in a wide variety of track geometry, and they operate extremely well. Their flex is also superb and hits the perfect balance between its malleability and its ability to hold a shape. Electrofrog versus Insulfrog has baffled many modelers unnecessarily over the years, and Pico has responded by developing the Unifrog, which is the best of both worlds. I would also recommend Insulfrogs for DCC operation if you don't feel like installing power routing switch equipment under each switch. If wiring doesn't bother you, Electrofrogs provide confident performance for even the smallest wheelbase engines with their power routing frogs. Next, I also heartily recommend microengineering switches in FlexTrack, but for different reasons. Microengineering switches are very beautifully detailed and operate well. I like using them for foreground scenes like industrial sidings. Microengineering Flex is unique in the modeling world in that it really holds its shape without needing any additional help. It's really fun to model tight curves and lumpy old industrial sidings to get that realistic look. The ME switches are similar in construction to the Pico Insulfrogs and don't require any additional wiring unless you're doing them back to back. Then you'll want to put wire drops between each switch for good connectivity. The microengineering Flex can also come chemically blackened to save some time weathering it, which is really nice. Buy it from them directly, as hobby shops have been having trouble getting it in stock recently, although that may have changed by the time you watch this video. Notice I haven't recommended Atlas Flex Track or switches. This was intentional. Their cast frog designs and their switches wear poorly with use, and the tolerances for the points are often a lot looser than other manufacturers. The Atlas Super Flex Track is too flexible. It actually doesn't hold any shape and must be held down aggressively with lots of track nails or adhesive. I used to use Atlas all the time, but I grew out of it. It's 1970s engineering sold to us in the 2020s, and unless they redesign their line of track, I don't plan on using it anymore for myself or client projects. Before you go down in the comments section to reflexively defend Atlas, they're a very good company whose locomotives and rolling stock are the backbone of my fleet. They're better at making trains than track, that's all I'm saying. I hope one day they do redesign their entire line of track to match Pico or microengineering quality standards, since they're now comparable in price. Remember what I said to you earlier about track being only as good as your patience. Model railroading as a hobby is rarely cheap, so make sure that every dollar of your hobby money goes to truly reliable, quality items, track especially. I'm sure plenty of people have left the hobby prematurely from bad experiences with track and track laying. Don't become one of them. For the Alta II, I decided to go even farther, only using Pico's Streamline 83 for all mainline track. I noticed that Atlas, Pico, and Microengineering all have different tie heights, which would require shimming to mate them well if I use different types of flex on the same line. All mainline crossovers are number 8 for that smooth crossover feel, even with the longest cars. Since all crossovers on the layout are restricted speed, I feel this is the right balance of look and function. Real high-speed mainline crossovers would be many times longer than even the number 8 switches. All the industrial sidings will be Pico and Microengineering number 6s. One cost-saving measure you can do if you're very careful is that you can reuse switches from previous layouts, but only if the model itself is completely intact and operates well. UV damage, wear and tear can destroy switches over time. Don't be afraid to replace troublesome switches entirely. Many of the switches for the Alta Mark I were carefully salvaged, cleaned, and reused for Mark II. Alongside the salvage switches are the new Pico switches and an entire box of new Pico FlexTrack. I was able to lay both main lines with just one box, but I would recommend always buying more than you need. It's not like you won't need additional pieces in the future for repairs or expansion. I did not salvage any FlexTrack from the old layout, as it had become brittle, baked by the sun, and had paint, ballast, and soldering wire debris attached to it. These could cause derailments. I cut the old rail up into 39 scale-foot sections and plan to make a maintenance-of-way flat car with a rail load sometime soon with them. I used a small drill bit smaller in diameter than the Pico track nails I was using. I then pre-drilled all the track upside down using the molded-in pilot holes as a guide. Work went quickly. I drill a whole piece, lay the track nails with pliers, and rinse, repeat. For the curves, I strongly recommend using track alignment gauges like Pico's Tracksetta or Ribbon Rails line. No matter how obsessive you think you are, you will not get a perfect radius curve without using these guides. They're pretty easy to use. Plop them into a piece of FlexTrack at the beginning of a curve and tack the pre-drilled FlexTrack right in front of the gauge as you go around. If you laid the cork right, it should more or less follow the center line. If it deviates from the cork a bit, that's totally fine and will be adjusted when it's time to ballast. For the Alta II, I bought 4 gauges, 32 and 43 for the inside radius curves, and 34 and 45 for the outer mainline radius curves. I laid all the curves, tacking them in with track nails, but with an eye towards the other neat addition this time around, super elevation. In real railroads, super elevation is necessary. It helps steer the train around a curve. It also reduces wear on the rails and wheels. In addition, it reduces lateral forces and improves comfort for passengers and crew. On a model railroad, it just looks really, really cool. It also makes filming trains look really, really nice. Again inspired by Everard Junction, I purchased an obscene amount of the 3D printed bulk packs from West Hill Wagon Works. They're little wedges in 3 heights that together make a very smooth transition into and out of a super elevated curve. They were incredibly easy to use, and definitely easier than the 1990s Model Railroader article about using strip styrene or lumber shims. Taking advantage of the wedge shape, I carefully slid them under the already installed track. The nails gently rose to hold them in place snugly. You can affix them more permanently with CA glue once you're satisfied with their operation. Next, I know this is the hard part, extensively play with your trains to test the curves out. I know this may be the hardest part of the whole operation, but I have faith in you. Relax and enjoy, and refine as needed. In a fitting tribute to the old layout, Baldwin number 200 was the first to hit the rails, and the track was extensively tested following a cute golden spike event where everybody came out for photos. Even the Burro was excited to be there. After that, test the line with your most unforgiving piece of equipment. The longest, the tallest, the longest wheelbase steam locomotives, and the short critters are essential. In the next video, we'll be refining the sidings, installing the transfer table, and maybe even part of the interurban line. Stay tuned. As always, the immense time it takes to write, record, and edit these videos becomes easier with every dollar of your support. I can dedicate more time to producing fun, enjoyable videos like these. On Patreon this fall, I have a custom-designed mug with a Pacific Electric blimp on it, and a lovely dark blue long-sleeve t-shirt with a Boeing LRV light rail design I made. Consider supporting at any level, and you'll have plenty to enjoy along with my videos. Thank you to all my patrons who are already on board as well. This has been An Urban Era. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.